Your Majesties, Excellencies, dear colleagues, Herr Weidmann, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately we are really running out of time because I have to leave 7 o'clock sharp to get a plane to Malta, where we tomorrow discuss cybersecurity among our colleagues. But let me start by talking to you about an apparent paradox. And I start very simple. If you hurt yourself, you need first aid and sometimes even more. A pressure bandage for a wound that is bleeding, a recovery position if you are unconscious, or even more. We are used to that. If you don't get medical care, your life and health could be in serious danger. It is actually rather obvious. If danger threatens, we must do something to prevent it. If we can't prevent it, then we must deal with the aftermath, investigate the causes, and keep it from happening again. Why am I telling you this? Because prevention, protection, and response seem like obvious steps to take in the real world and in the digital world. In the digital world, these obvious steps are not always taken. Therefore, some of the participants knew. Unfortunately, this is a paradox and a danger. Considering how digital vulnerability is growing everywhere in the world, almost all of the G20 countries could stand to add a few things to their digital first aid kits. And that applies to Germany as well. It takes more than a plaster or an aspirin to deal effectively with digital threats. One thing is clear, our dependence on IT-assisted processes and systems continues to grow. This means that our digital vulnerability is growing too. The technology we use is increasingly complex and interdependent. Attackers are more and more professional. Harmful software is getting smarter and smarter. And digital progress is still accompanied by carelessness, indifference, and attitude that everything will be okay. Or, as you mentioned it earlier, at least I will not be the target. And finally, there are vulnerabilities in software products which software makers don't fix quickly enough, leaving the door very open to attackers. All of these factors also affect the financial sector and make it more vulnerable. You already know that. You don't need a German minister for the interior or the Homeland Security to tell you about it. But my portfolio includes protecting our digital lives at work and at home, and above all, protecting what is known as critical infrastructure. And that is, of course, includes the financial sector, but not only the financial sector. Their failure would cause shortages, disruption of public security, or other dramatic consequences. These areas are the supply of water, food, energy, as well as information technology, telecommunications, transport, healthcare, finance, insurance sectors, all areas where we cannot afford to have it fail. Germany's federal government has required operators of these critical infrastructures to meet minimum standards for IT security and to report significant IT security incidents to one central body, the Federal Office for Information Security. This was not easy, by the way, because it's not good news for a company to report such an attack. It's better to hide it. Or it seems to be better. This agency will analyze the information and make it available to all critical infrastructure operators in the form of a report. Operators of large data centers are also required to report incidents. Our law takes a cooperative approach and calls for government and operators of critical infrastructure to work together. Reporting and warning, development standards and security measures, it all takes cooperation, including that of the financial sector, which is as critical as it is vulnerable. In the past, the main targets of cyber attacks in the financial sector were banking customers. Criminals focused primarily on electronic payments of a good target. We are still seeing this kind of attack, but criminals are increasingly targeting the banks themselves or manipulating stock markets. Financial market and payment infrastructures are becoming more and more centralized, making them a problem for the entire industry. So cyber attacks can have major impacts on the financial markets and far-reaching effects on the global economy. Most of you probably remember the hacking of the SWIFT payment system last year. Some of the banks in the SWIFT system had outdated IC systems that the hackers were able to manipulate in order to send forked payment orders to other banks. In technical terms, nothing really new or groundbreaking, nothing new under the sun. What was new about this attack is that the hackers had spied on the affected banks over a longer period of time and so were able to gain extensive insider knowledge also about the system's weaknesses. What does this mean? We need a higher level of IT security. In the digital world, as in the healthcare, this includes prevention and thorough protection, rapid action in emergencies, quarantines, effective isolation of infectious agents, and thorough investigation of the causes. Quite similar approaches. Otherwise, people will lose trust in digital technology. I don't need to tell you that trust is crucial, particularly in the world of finance. When you entrust someone with your money, you have to trust that they are honest, that they are competent, and that they are who they say they are. You have to trust that your money is safe with them. Ultimately, trust is the currency of a good bank. You know that better than me. At the same time, accepting capital requires trust on the part of financial institutions. Trust that the transaction is legitimate. This means knowing those money they are accepting, for whom they are opening an account, and of course, to whom they are lending money. So the basic requirement for every financial transaction is being able to reliably identify the client. This is less a problem when the client is standing in front of you. His or her identity card can be verified with an ID document. But it is much more difficult to identify clients in online banking, online trading, and online lending. Identity verification must be just as reliable in the digital world and ideally so simple, fast, and convenient. It may seem practical for clients to verify their identity online by showing their ID via the camera on their smartphone or home computer because it's quick and familiar to anyone who has ever used Skype. But how reliable is this kind of identification? You can take a picture of a forked identity document that anyone will recognize as fake as soon as they picked it up. And with photo and video editing software, you can make it look absolutely authentic. Or these are cases in which criminals have used software to change the way they look online in order to match the photo on a stolen ID. In both cases, banks are at risk of confirming the trustworthiness of a false identity. To be perfectly clear, using video chats to verify the identity of bank clients does not allow for reliable document checking. Video transmissions, which can be manipulated, do not meet the requirements for a trustworthy, legally binding foundation for banking transactions. Despite all the advantages offered by digitized processes, convenience must not come at the price of security, especially not in the financial sector. Of course, secure procedures must also be user-friendly, or they will not gain acceptance. With a secure online ID function, for example, of our national ID card in Germany and electronic residence permit, Germany has introduced a safe and trustworthy way to verify identity in the online world. There are still some problems, but we are working on it to overcome them. But this identity card is only one example to show that security and convenience do not have to be mutually exclusive, even though, and this is very important, there is always a tension between them. Convenience and security will never be the same. So if you have more security, it will not be so convenient than without security. Of course, security has its price. IT security is not cheap, but it is a good investment. Security must be an integral part of the product, also a financial product. Ladies and gentlemen, it's hardly surprising for the Minister of the Interior to promote security, even in finance policy circles like this one. Nor is it surprising that I'm calling for more effective investigation and law enforcement in cyberspace. This will be one of the key challenges for security policy in the coming years. We must share information and knowledge at national and international level even more intensively, connect our investigation networks, and build lasting cooperation, for example, in Europol and Interpol. As in analog world, we need adequate and robust tools to prevent serious threats effectively. To mention only one example, when criminals or terrorist suspects communicate with each other, it shouldn't make a difference whether they use an ordinary telephone, a smartphone, or instant messaging. But nowadays, it's the case. It's a totally different legal system. This is why we urgently need law that treats providers of telecommunications and telemedia services exactly the same. I'm working with my European counterparts on this. Further, the principle that providers are bound to the rules and laws of the jurisdiction where they offer their services must also apply to telemedia services. And this is a tough discussion with them. And finally, we need more cooperation in fighting cybercrime. Germany recently played a key role in breaking up the global Avalanche botnet. Avalanche was a virtual international structure used to launch phishing attacks and cause damage running into the millions. A number of G20 countries participated in the effort to take down this network. It was 4 years of investigation, led by German agencies. Computers of 30 countries were misused as bots, and we had victims in 180 countries. And a gang from about 10 to 20 persons, they did it. In the end, they failed. But it took 4 years to get them. All of us in the G20 face similar challenges which no country can overcome on its own. Resilient infrastructures and a secure internet make up the backbone of our globalized world across borders and legal systems. National efforts in cyberspace can only have partial success. By contrast, the international community can achieve a great deal when it is willing to act together. This is why I'm urging dependably international cooperation to benefit us all. In this way, our cybersecurity policy will be able to take advantage of the enormous opportunities offered by the digital technology while keeping risks and threats under control. If we don't win this battle, then trust will leave and success will leave afterwards. Then, if we are successful, then I can stop worrying about our digital patient, and regular checkups may be enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, for those wonderful comments. So it's nice to see cybersecurity a critical part of the conversation as we talk about digitizing finance. So thank you to Your Majesty and to President Weidman for inviting me out here, so I do appreciate it. And we've got good news, and I think it's the first time I've ever said it's good news. Your plane is delayed, Minister, so we have an additional 10 minutes.
It does? Yeah. Is that true, yeah? Or
Yes.
it's a trick? Yeah.
No, it's true. It's true. 10 minutes. So now is a great now is a great time to pull out your app if you have a question from the minister's speech, or some of the questions that we're going to ask up here. But in the meantime, if you have a thought that you'd like to send up, please open your app on the iPad provided and send it up. So, Minister, this is a growing area of importance around the globe. And one of the things that keeps me awake at night and concerns me dramatically is the advent of the Internet of Things. So, in the connectivity that is actually just rolling out around the globe with these very small, inexpensive devices in enterprises, governments, corporations, and homes as well around the globe. So we see major attacks with those. We've seen the DIN attack that took place, the largest distributed denial of service attack ever. And is this an area that concerns you, and what is the ministry thinking about this challenge and how you're going to help counter it? So for Germany and, really for an example for the EU.
Well, first of all, I think we should discuss and decide who is responsible. Who is responsible for cybersecurity? And I can only say we are responsible for our own IT security, that our governmental systems are okay. And this is hard work. And then we feel, in a way, responsible for critical infrastructures I mentioned. And it's difficult to describe. When I wrote the list, Mr. Weidman, I know him, he said, oh, it's everything. But it's not everything. It's not a single hospital, perhaps the biggest one in Germany. It's not the whole system of healthcare, but crucial elements of it. It's not the whole telecommunication, but some of the centers. So there, I think governments must feel responsible. For the rest, I'm sorry, you are responsible. This is how I understand responsibility and liability. And what I'm really criticizing is in the internet discussions, that because of freedom and everything, we forgot liability. And success and liability is normally linked together. Why I'm saying this? Because if nobody feels responsibility for safety and security for the Internet of Things, it will fail. If the first car automatically is directed in a huge mass of people, directed by terrorists, the whole system of automatic driving systems will be damaged. So just one example on the terrorist side, but if, for example, using cameras for smart home are misused by criminals or attackers to explore how to get better into these houses, the whole system of smart home will be not an economic success. So this is your job, or the job of the market system. We can help there. I think the authorities should help there. For example, standardization is important. Certification standards, something what we call in German Gütesiegel. How would you translate that, Gütesiegel? Can somebody help me? Huh? Seal of approval, something like the Blue Angel for some products or so. This could be a help. And the best way to have more security and safety there is huge damage. If you have damages, then you will insurance companies to work with these damages. That costs in security are not lost. So it's good to invest in cybersecurity to avoid damages. If you don't have to pay for anything. And if you don't have a damage, you will not invest. So this is my answer. It's a concern, but it should be your concern and not my concern.
It's a good answer, and it is everyone's responsibility for sure. So, Minister, during your speech, you touched a little bit on dealing with other governments around the globe. So, can you tell us a little bit, about what you're doing to actually help establish norms in cyberspace? So, how do you actually pull together the right discussions around the globe so that when somebody commits a crime, so through the cyber realm that actually has a kinetic effect here in Germany, how do you actually work with law enforcement around the globe to make sure that the policies are in place so those individuals can be prosecuted regardless of where they sit?
A difficult question. First of all, we are concentrating on Europe. There we have the institutions, or we don't have the institutions. There is no European law enforcement, for example. The justice ministers are dealing with that for 10 or even more years without success. But we have Europol. We are working together. It's difficult enough. I've gave you the example. But what we need there are standards. And there we are working together, and I think we should work together on a European level because our market is too small, the German one, the Luxembourg, the Dutch one. So we need, the only chance if we have European standards, we can influence the standardization of the world. So this is what we are trying to do. And then we are, in a way, as a Minister for Homeland Security, we normally underline repression and police work, and we underestimate prevention. Here, prevention is nearly everything. If you don't prevent your own systems, you will be attacked, or you will be misused for attackers, and you even don't know that your computer is used for an attack. So we are, like priests, are giving speeches like this to tell everybody, do a lot of prevention there, common prevention. I think the bank system in former times to use on a common basis credit cards, Kreditkarten and Checkkarten. This was quite a successful model. They wanted that a German tourist could have money in Spain or in Indonesia or so, at least in Spain. But it should be safe. So they work together on a private basis to avoid damages, to have similar standards for safety and security. So I think this could be a model for other industries as well. And if you, we have all this standardization for airplanes, for cars, for I don't know whatever you can think about. And for services, I think we need the same type of standardization processes, at least within Europe.
Well, I appreciate that, sir. And we had a really good follow-up question from a member of the audience. How do you assess the role of lawmakers in judiciary system and courts to curb cybercrimes? Are they evolving at an appropriate speed today?
No, they are not. But they are doing better and better. And for lawmakers, it's an old discussion. If you intervene in innovations very early, then you are running the process, but perhaps you hinder new innovations in a direction which could be successful, but what you don't see now. If you let innovations go and don't regulate it at all, and if you wait, then it can be that it's too late to get back governance on these innovations. So this is a fundamental question there, by the way, more, or at least in biological and medicine innovations. What is the time to find the right way and the best time to make law on that? So here, I think it was good that we didn't hinder the innovations on the IT issue. But now we have to hurry up, otherwise it could be too late. And from a European perspective, all the rules are governed by private companies, more or less from America. So if we want to have a chance there, not only because of security, but because of our market chances there, we should concentrate on European rules on security, at least to find a level playing field in Europe.
Well, that leads into another great question, and I appreciate that, Minister. You know, today, you know, in the U.S., we see a number of different laws, you know, inside each individual state. And here in Europe, we're about to see the, I don't want to misconstrue that, the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, and the Network and Information Security Directive are both coming into play here shortly, the end of this year and starting next year. So what's your opinion on those, and do you think they're going to minimize the risk of cyber attacks once they're fully implemented? And are there any other actions that the EU should be taking over time to help minimize the risk?
Well, the Data Protection Regulation had a lot to deal with that in the last year. It's not on cybersecurity, it's on data protection. But it influences, of course, the use of, for example, big data instruments and things like that. So I think we did quite a good job to allow new innovations there to use big data instruments with a high data protection standard. At least what is useful there, what I mentioned earlier, the level playing field in Europe, what we call, now I need help again, Marktort-Prinzip. What is this in English? Marktort-Prinzip. Marktort-Prinzip. The principle that the law is where you offer your service. And it's not important where the headquarters of your company is. When you offer a GPS or something like that in Europe, then you have to follow the rules in Europe. This is what we call Marktort-Prinzip. And this is very important not only for data protection, but for the use of IT and I-security as well. The NIS directive is very new. We will implement it in Germany very early. It's quite similar to our IT security law I mentioned in my speech. And this means standards for critical infrastructure to make sure that they are functioning. So both are important steps, but others will follow.
Okay, thank you, Minister. So, and you just kind of knew in this day and age this was going to come up, so we'll make this the final question. Besides the criminal acts of people, what about the criminal acts of government-supported organizations or potentially intelligence agencies in the digital arena? So we'll take that too, you know, are you concerned about
criminal acts by governmental agencies?
Such as meddling in an election process.
Oh. So
quite timely, I think.
I was wondering if you were asking about Snowden and all these things. No. Well, again, is this new under the sun, manipulating informations? The answer is no. It's not new at all. It was part of conflicts all over the world and all in history with great influences. But of course, started by governments is not new as well. But perhaps the quantity of die Streubreite, würde man sagen, die Reichweite, würde man das sagen, Reichweite? Huh? The scope of it is, of course, new. And it's a matter of concern. So what to do? Number one is, I think, governments are unable, for example, to explore algorithms used by those attackers. This has to be done by Facebook and others. And they are ready to do so. Secondly, fake news or types of manipulations. There is very little state role there, because then we are close to censorship. But what we need is private institutions, press agencies, others, who evaluate these news and then give alarm to say, this is manipulating the audience. So enlightenment is the only advice I have so far. But enlightenment was quite successful in Europe, so let's try it this way. And in a way, I would say that, at least in Germany, this type of campaigning is at least, and so far, not popular. Just the opposite. So those who use it, if we can blame them, will hopefully not be successful.
Well, thank you, Minister. I find it exhilarating to find somebody at your level so steeped in cyber risk. So thank you very much. A big round of applause, please, and thank you for your time, sir.